Welcome to Rock and Roll Fridays, a podcast
Welcome
on
to
musical
Rock and Roll
encounters
Fridays.
and
I'm
life.
so happy to have a guest, Jessica Tracy. Hi, Jessica. How are you?
Hi, Michael. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, so Rock and Roll Fridays is diving into the mission of integrating psychedelics and psychedelic assisted therapies into the current healthcare system. So Jessica has owned and operated and started what's called the Sage Collective. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about the Sage Collective and your background?
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, so I guess maybe I'll start with the background, and then that kind of leads me into how I started, why I started the Sage Collective. So just to start, the Sage Collective, our mission is to integrate psychedelic assisted therapies into the traditional healthcare ecosystem. And that's primarily to increase awareness, access, and affordability of psychedelic medicine. And I founded this organization really because of my own experience and challenges with mental health and finding psychedelic medicines and how transformational they were for my own health. So, background, I spent about 20 years in healthcare, almost 20 years in healthcare. And I started out in insurance and started out as an underwriter at insurance company here in Philadelphia, and then moved over to the benefits consulting space and spent some time there in data analytics and cost containment strategies. So spent, a decent amount of time in employee benefits consulting, primarily working with unions, employers, and large payers. And then from there, I transitioned over to the vendor side and I worked in clinical genetics, really focused on integrating clinical genetics into the employee benefits ecosystem, very
Awesome.
similar to what's happening now with psychedelics. And these screenings also weren't covered by traditional insurance. So we were trying to democratize access there. So all the while I was dealing with my own challenges with anxiety, with insomnia. I was having panic attacks quite often and, had trouble focusing. So, I got different diagnoses because of that ADD, OCD,
Right.
panic disorder from the panic attack. So, lots of things that can label you. And I took the conventional approaches to manage that. I took what the doctor prescribed, which was SSRIs, Xanax for the panic attacks. I was prescribed sleeping pills. I didn't really
Right.
like it. Made me feel so bad. And then also Adderall. Again, I couldn't really take that because it made me too anxious. So, I was doing that in therapy for about 15 years. And I just found that it never really improved. It just really masked those symptoms that I was experiencing. And I'll also add, while it was supposed to mask those symptoms, it did for a while, but I noticed that they would come back or they would get even more challenging. And then we would have to look at, different mechanisms.
Right.
And I realize now that's because if you're not actually going in there and addressing the root cause of the condition, right, you're actually helping, it could actually manifest into something stronger, right? You're feeling more experiences of those symptoms. So I was fortunate enough to find psychedelic assisted therapies, and we can get into that more. But through working with these medicines, I was able to, I would say, kind of totally transform my mental health, improve my anxiety, improve my sleep, and really able to get off all of my medications. I haven't taken medication for almost 5 years now. I'm sleeping way better, and then I haven't drank for 2 years, and I definitely relied on wine as a coping mechanism, as I did with overworking.
Right.
So, because of my own experience with these medicines and how long I tried to feel better, get better with conventional therapies, and really wasn't finding that, true relief. And when I worked with these medicines, how quickly and how effectively they worked, and not just worked around symptoms, but truly transforming me and getting to the root cause of those conditions so that I, having to deal with them anymore. So that's why I founded the Sage Collective, was to really focus on integrating that into traditional healthcare.
It's awesome. And you use the word medicines, and we talked offline about kind of the nomenclature of drugs, and also how people in society look at these medicines, right, compared to traditional medicines. And the irony of some of these medicines is they've been around for thousands of years compared to current SSRIs or drugs that are being created, every year by pharmaceutical companies. Can you talk about kind of how you've seen a shift maybe, or that the shift is still coming when it comes to these medicines, and how providers and doctors and patients are viewing these medicines?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, so I do believe that there's a shift, and I'm seeing a shift. And I think that's really due to the fact of, I think, people understanding and realizing that the conventional therapies that we've had for so long, they're just not effective for far too many people. They do work for some people, right? And they work really well for some people, and that's incredible, right? But there are a significant amount of people that they either are not helping enough, or they truly just don't work at all. So when we look at conditions like PTSD, like generalized anxiety disorder, like depression, like addiction, the treatment resistant rates for individuals with those conditions is substantial. So 30 to 60% of people with those conditions, they don't respond to therapy. They don't respond to medication, right? So when you think about, let's think about the provider side. If you think about providers that want to try to treat their patients and really help their patients break through some of these conditions that they've been carrying for so long, they only have certain tools in their toolkit to work with.
Right.
And they've been experiencing the challenge that those tools are not working for a lot of people, and they want to help them, right? So when we look at the clinical research and the science that's out there that shows over and over again how incredibly effective these medicines actually are, I think it's hard not to be open to at least exploring, at least considering, at least learning more about that. And I also I do work with an organization called Enthea, and they're an employee benefits firm, an employee benefits program that provides insurance coverage for ketamine assisted therapy. So with the work that I do there, I'm working with employers, with unions, with EAPs, with brokers and consultants to really educate them about these interventions, and to help them see how effective they are, and also to help them see that, within their own mental health strategy, there's a gap specifically for the treatment resistant population.
Sure. Yeah.
Also, those that just are taking, somebody like me that was taking medication for so long that didn't want to be on medication anymore, that really wanted to have that breakthrough. So I'm seeing a ton of receptivity there. We've already got a ton of clients that have signed on, which is super exciting. We have patients going through, and the outcomes, we can get into them, but the outcomes are just so profound. And I mean, literally, where people are getting out of a PTSD clinical diagnosis, they're getting
Right.
out of
Right.
diagnosis of depression.
And when we hear this, right, about clinical trials and about data. When do you think that tipping point will occur? Is it when pharmaceutical companies get involved, or is it when just the amount of people that are having success becomes mainstream? I mean, 30% is a large number, right? Even getting that number down to 10%, right, is a huge amount of people that can be served. So when do you think that tipping point will occur where these medicines can be more mainstream and more open to people utilizing them?
I think it's going to take a little bit of everything, to be honest. I think it's going to take patients continuing to, have access to these medicines, so that they are having their own transformation and, kind of spreading the word around how effective they are. I think for patients to almost start, demanding access and asking for access to these medicines. So if more and more providers and clinicians are getting requests about these medicines, then, that's obviously going to support it. Having pharma companies involved, I think that would help, at least with moving things along with the FDA.
Sure.
I think, there's always hesitation around pharma getting involved, especially with natural medicines, and totally understandable hesitations. If that helps to move FDA approvals along, that obviously could help with access, that obviously could help with affordability. So I guess there is that one
Yeah.
side of it.
But
And
the other side of that also is, without FDA involvement or structural involvement, I mean, people are and do I know for a fact, and also anecdotally, people are taking their own health into their own hands, whether that's microdosing for migraines, whether that's, cannabis for anxiety. So, I don't know if that's necessarily the best method either, but people are, to your point, starting to look at other alternatives when it comes to their own health and mental well-being.
Yeah, they are. And it's a shame that people would have to feel like they're doing something wrong for that,
Right,
right?
right.
Engage in something that's actually finally helping them, and they have to feel like they're doing something wrong to work
Or
with
breaking the law for that matter, right?
exactly. And also too, like, it's really important that people know what they're getting themselves into, and that they have the appropriate support, they have the appropriate resources. And a lot of people that are less familiar with this space, they don't know where to go to get the right resources, or to know like what is the appropriate support, what is the appropriate kind of process here. So I think that that can lead to individuals maybe not having the best experience if they don't do
Right.
it as safely, or with the appropriate support, with people that they trust. So I think that's an important aspect of this when we take something like this and try to create more awareness. It's really around providing that education so that people know what they're getting into and can do so safely.
Right, right. Now, I know the podcast is supposed to be about music, but we talk about all things. But with these medicines, there is a musical connection, with ketamine therapy. Most people have some sort of musical experience or music connected with the experience, and with psychedelics as well. There, and in the history of, outside of medicine usage, there's always been this, you know, connection between music and natural medicines in some way. Can you talk a little bit about the connection and what you see, how practitioners are using music when they're providing these medicines?
Yeah, absolutely. So music is incredibly it's an important component of healing, right? It has an incredible capacity to help throughout the healing journey. The vibrations or the frequencies of the instruments can really help to it can help to heal the central nervous system. Depending on the instrument, it can also help to process and move trauma through you. So, combining music with these medicines can be really powerful in helping to move trauma through, and to help to kind of get that stored and suppressed emotions that are deep down inside that are really stuck, to help to kind of bring them out, move them through, and then help to ultimately reset the nervous system. So, even outside of these medicines, instruments and music have been used to heal for thousands and thousands of years, dating as far back to working with the shaman drum or the frame drum, right? So that drum is has been used across almost every single culture to take people into journeys without even using psychedelic medicine. So you
Right,
go on
right.
into an altered state of consciousness with the frame drum, and really with many different instruments, with the djembe drum, or people will have similar experiences even with working with sound bowls, where they're listening and all of a sudden
Yeah,
start crying for some reason. They're not sure why, but something is breaking through, something is moving through them, processing, and they're getting ultimately a release of that stored or suppressed emotion.
yeah. Well, and it also makes sense just in kind of normal everyday life. When you hear a song, it brings you back to a moment in time, like, or songs over time change based on where and when you're listening to them, right? Like traditional music or rock and roll music, if you will. Like, you hear a song and so there is always, I think, an emotional element to music, and having an experience with music. What what would you what advice would you give for people that are looking, or that maybe, to your earlier point, have tried traditional therapies and are frustrated or thinking that there's another way out there, what's the first thing you advise people to do if they're trying to look at alternative, right now, I think it's considered alternative solutions or alternative medicine, but where should people look and how should they go about finding maybe an experience that's right for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say definitely do your research. There's different options, different medicines that you can work with. And, I think accessibility is going to vary. So we have ketamine assisted therapy, right? And that's something that is legal in every state across the country. So that's something that is, pretty accessible now. We also, of course, are pending approval from the FDA on MDMA assisted therapies that, individuals can access that medicine outside of clinical research, which right now in the States anyway, that's really the only way to legally access it. Psilocybin and mushrooms, that's an incredibly powerful medicine, extremely safe profile. I think one of the safest medicines you can actually work with.
Mm,
And, there are plenty of retreat centers that you can go to now, actually, even in the States. So you can go over to Oregon and find a wellness center where they're offering these services and you can access them legally. Colorado you'll soon be able to, go to different wellness centers there, and various states are creating that legal access on a state-by-state basis. And there's also retreats that you can go to. So my partner and I do work with a retreat in Jamaica. They also have a location in BVI called Wake, and they have, a great clinical program. And there's plenty of other, different retreats that are out there that are reputable. But I would always say, do the research though, because you're working with really powerful medicines and you are going into a space that it's really important to make sure that you trust the people that you're working with.
you had the word in my head, the
Yes.
trust factor. Yes.
The trust factor. It's so important. You're not going to be able to feel safe. It's going to impact your experience. You're not going to be able to fully let go. So making sure that, you're working with someone that you trust, whether it's through a referral or, a trusted resource, and meeting the people, making sure you're asking lots of questions about the experience, their approach, their how they've gotten to this point, what type of training they've gone through, because there's plenty of people that I think will probably jump into this maybe a little too quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's really important.
And for the medicines and therapies that you named, are you finding based on the research and your experience that certain therapies are more, more efficient for certain diagnoses or areas where people are trying to improve upon based on ketamine or mushrooms, or like, are you finding that, anxiety, for instance, maybe it's better a ketamine therapy than a mushroom experience?
It's a good question. I think all of these medicines, I think do a good job in supporting healing for things like anxiety, for depression, for PTSD, for addiction. I think that, ultimately there's more research or more supporting evidence for some of the medicines tied to certain conditions than others.
Right.
But in general, I think that, they all work really well. I do find, mushrooms to be more of a kind of gentler medicine. It's a natural medicine, of course, and works really well for anxiety, for depression, for addiction. But ketamine assisted therapy can work for all of them as well. And, I think it is going to be, personalized, and depends on what your preference is as well. I think we're going to get to the point, for example, with MDMA assisted therapy, when I'm going to say when, assuming that it's going to be approved, when it gets approved, that is only going to be available as, through a doctor, where it's getting prescribed and hopefully getting covered, from an insurance perspective,
Sure.
that it's going to be dependent upon what the FDA approves. So the indication that it supports, which is going to be PTSD and likely certain severity or certain levels of PTSD.
Got it.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And that will help, I hate the word mainstream, but mainstream it in a way that people can say, wow, there's an alternative for me because I have PTSD that I haven't tried, and they can go try it now. And hopefully that just helps validate and create better outcomes for doctors and for patients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, that's really important, is gathering the data, the real life data, I think, outside of clinical research. And I think what we're going to find, I know what we're going to find, is that it does continue to show the same profound outcomes.
Right, right. So how can people find you and your organizations? So, and also businesses, right? Employers looking to add these benefits to for their employees.
Yeah, absolutely. So they can find me, through the Sage Collective, at Jessica at thesagecollective.co. That's CO. For my work with employers and unions in getting ketamine assisted therapy covered by insurance, you can find me at through Enthea, and that email is jessica@enthea.com. And then, of course, please, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to and grateful to have you join my network. And then also you can find me on Instagram.
Awesome. Jessica, this was a great discussion. I'm so glad I can help promote these medicines and the tie-in with music. And I think that's a harp behind you. So very cool.
It is. Yeah, I have my, this is my travel harp. And then I have my larger harp there, and my djembe there. My partner and I are doing a lot of work with drum circles, kind of helping to use music to build community. And obviously we know the drum is very healing, and really helps in kind of processing moving trauma as well. So yeah, it's fun stuff.
It's awesome. Music is never far behind, as they say. So it was awesome talking to you, and awesome. Good luck. And I will promote all your work as much as I can.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate you.
Thank you.